You have 30 seconds to remove that stroller before I do it myself. That's what Verna Kell, president of the High Bar Summit HOA, said with both hands on her hips and one orthopedic sneaker already planted against the back wheel. Her laminated badge flashed in the sun like it meant something. Behind her, 2 board members stood like security detail, flanking the Safe Growth banner she had just hung across the walking trail entrance. My daughter was still in the stroller, 6 months old, sleeping. Don't make this harder, Verna added. You've been warned. That device violates Community Infant Mobility Standard 3.2. Your appeal was denied. I didn't raise my voice, just tapped the small housing under the stroller's left handle and said, "This sensor's still pinging back to the National Crash Analytics Lab. You touch it, there's a record." Her hands flinched for a second, then steadied. She hadn't expected a sensor. If you're a parent, or if you've ever loved someone small and helpless, stop scrolling. What happens next will turn your stomach. Subscribe now, because I want this video reaching every HOA board member who thinks power justifies cruelty. My name is Malric Trenner. I built that stroller. I don't mean I bought it online and customized the seat. I mean I engineered every component. Before my daughter was born, I spent 8 years as a forensic biomechanics analyst reconstructing pediatric injury patterns for the Department of Justice. I once testified in a Senate hearing about what happens when a baby falls wrong at 7 miles per hour. I wasn't just pushing my daughter. I was protecting her with every algorithm, every polymer, every minute I didn't sleep during my wife's pregnancy. And Verna Kell wanted it gone because it didn't match community aesthetic. What she didn't know was that my wife, Olivia Trenner, wasn't just away on work. She was undercover, leading a deep federal task force targeting child welfare fraud across HOA-run family zones. We'd agreed not to mix our jobs. That agreement ended the moment Verna made physical contact. I saw Verna's hand shift from threatening to grabbing. She yanked the stroller with her left hand and twisted the grip upward. I moved fast. Too late. The shock-absorbing frame tilted. The counterweight failed to correct in time. Lisa tumbled out, her little head bouncing sideways against the trail's synthetic turf. There was a moment where everything froze. The wind, my chest, the blood in my ears. Then she screamed. I dropped to my knees as my body went into automatic. Head check, neck check, pupils reactive, no bleeding, legs moving, breathing uneven. Crying was good. Crying meant conscious. "You just assaulted my child," I said without looking up. Verna crossed her arms. "You brought an unauthorized structure into a protected community corridor. That's the violation. Don't shift blame." I didn't. Punch her, I wanted to. Instead, I unclipped the emergency tag from the stroller's frame. Embedded in it was the second-generation trauma sensor we'd been trialing before I took leave. It lit up red. 24 microaccelerometers. 2 axis roll detection. Red meant a force event exceeding 5 Gs. That tag was linked to a private server. I pressed it against my chest like a badge and stared Verna down. "You've made a recorded impact event on a federally monitored child protective prototype. This is going to court, and you'll wish it was civil." She opened her mouth, closed it. A board member touched her elbow. I scooped Lisa up and backed away. The stroller stood half-tipped. The banner behind Verna fluttered weakly in the breeze. Safe growth starts with compliance. I'm not a compliance guy. I'm a father, a specialist. And now, whether she knew it or not, Verna Kell had just filed her last HOA violation ever. She didn't realize what I knew, what I'd already built, or who Olivia was coming home to protect. But she would. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, especially if your HOA's ever gone too far. The HOA didn't apologize. They tripled down. By the time I got back from the pediatric clinic, after 3 hours of imaging, concussion screening, and a statement to the on-call social worker, there were 2 citations taped to our front door. Not mailed, not emailed, taped. One for reckless stroller operation, and another for failure to yield right-of-way to board official during sanctioned safety sweep. Both were signed by Verna Kell. Both carried fines. That night, I filed the first formal incident report on the HOA's resident portal, attaching a medical note from Lisa's attending nurse practitioner and a signed affidavit from a former colleague confirming the forensic capability of the trauma sensor. I uploaded a screenshot of the G-force spike. The portal glitched when I hit submit, froze, reloaded, my post was gone. The next morning, the HOA community board was filled with a different version of events. A post by Verna herself, clarifying incident at Trailhead, miscommunication regarding non-compliant equipment. She wrote that a misunderstanding occurred while ensuring neighborhood safety, and praised the swift and responsible actions of the involved parent. I read it twice. I hadn't been swift, I'd been too slow, and now Verna was using that guilt like cover. She didn't name me, but everyone knew. Lisa's stroller was distinct, and neighbors had seen the confrontation. Comments trickled in. Glad no one was hurt. Thanks to the HOA for staying on top of things. That guy with the weird stroller was bound to happen. By noon, someone had posted a poll. Should non-standard child equipment be subject to HOA clearance before use? The vote was already 18 yes, 4 no. The HOA labeled it informational only, but the message was clear. This was how they operated. Quiet smear campaigns and public gaslighting. I'd seen it before, just never from this close. In the days that followed, I kept expecting someone to reach out, a neighbor, a parent, even just a text. Instead, the silence grew. We weren't new to High Bar Summit. Olivia and I had lived here 5 years. Before Lisa, we used to host grill nights in the cul-de-sac. I'd helped fix 3 sprinkler systems and wired a full security loop for the Martins after their car got broken into. Now, people cross the street to avoid saying hi. One neighbor, Mrs. Ellswick, who used to bring over plant cuttings for Olivia, averted her eyes when I passed her at the mailbox kiosk. But it wasn't just fear, it was pattern recognition. Verna had done this before. There were cracks showing. Little things I hadn't thought about until now. Like the Gonzalez family 2 streets down, who moved out 6 months ago after getting fined 3 times for porch safety code violations when their twin toddlers kept leaving plastic toys on the steps. Or the Blaines, whose backyard canopy was removed while they were out of town because it didn't adhere to shade guidelines. Their autistic son used that canopy to regulate his sensory input. They didn't fight it. They just packed up and left 2 weeks later. I hadn't made the connection then. Now I couldn't unsee it. Lisa was part of a pattern, special needs adjacent, non-conforming equipment. A minor incident blown up, twisted, reframed as the fault of the parent, and the neighborhood rallied to protect the HOA instead of the family. I was watching the same strategy unfold in real time. This wasn't negligence, it was method. And Verna wasn't just working alone. She had enablers, people like Brent Dorr, the HOA's communications officer, who managed the portal and filtered the public posts, and Natalie Vicks, their risk liaison, who used to be an ER caseworker. She knew how to write a report that looked like concern when it was actually deflection. They weren't stupid, they were practiced. But this time, they had a problem. Because I wasn't filing complaints, I was building a case. I installed 2 new perimeter cameras outside the house, one facing the porch, one watching the trail behind our lot. Then I hardwired a secure NAS to the baby monitor, patched into its feed, and time-stamped everything through a forensic-grade sync module I still had from my DOJ days. I wasn't just waiting for Verna to strike again. I was inviting her to. Because somewhere in this HOA, someone else had seen what she did. And eventually, someone would crack. He didn't knock when he approached the house, just stood a few feet from the porch like he didn't want the cameras to catch him on the steps. I noticed him through the kitchen window, hunched a little, clipboard in one hand, HOA badge around his neck. Silas Dre, risk assessor for High Bar Summit's insurance committee. Verna's nephew. He was the one who filed the HOA's incident review recommendations whenever there was a medical or liability claim involving common grounds. I'd seen his name on the bottom of my second citation. I remembered it because the signature was slightly tilted, like it had been signed on a knee instead of a desk. I stepped out slowly. He didn't meet my eyes at first. "You here to deliver something?" I asked. Silas hesitated. "Verna said to check on your surveillance upgrades." "Funny, pretty sure that's not part of your job description." He adjusted his collar, looked toward the sidewalk, then back at me. "She said there were neighborhood complaints, said someone mentioned external-facing infrared feeds. She's not entitled to see anything outside her line of sight." "I know." His voice was flat, muted, but his eyes flicked toward the camera on the porch beam just once. "Just following up." The air between us hung stiff for a second. Then I opened the screen door and stepped back. "You want to come in and see what a father looks like after someone throws his kid onto a trail?" I asked. No compliance filter, no HOA memo. Silas's jaw tensed. He didn't answer right away. Then he did something unexpected. He stepped inside. I didn't pour coffee in, didn't offer a seat. I just pointed to the laptop still open on the counter, split screen with a live feed on the left, and archive motion events on the right. He looked at it, nodded once, then exhaled slowly. "I've reviewed 12 incident filings in the past 18 months, he said, all related to child safety. 10 were attributed to non-compliant parent behavior. 7 of those involve special needs modifications." I didn't say anything. 4 of those families moved out within 60 days of the final citation, he continued. 1, Gonzalez, sold below market. Another left without posting publicly. Nobody's filed counterclaims, not one. "Because they're scared," I said. Silas looked at me then, really looked. "Because they signed liability waivers they didn't understand, tied to portal access reinstatement." It was all I needed to hear. He knew. He had always known something wasn't right, but now he was saying it out loud. "What do you get out of helping her?" I asked. "My job," he said quietly. "I was brought in after Highbar switched insurers. Verna was getting flagged too often for high-risk categorization. They told her to find someone in-house who could keep things neutral. I needed work." "So you filed false risk summaries?" "I kept them general, coded, but I never lied." Then more quietly, "Until yours." He swallowed hard. The clipboard in his hand creaked as his grip tightened. "I saw the feed glitch," he said. "The camera failure at the watch point. It was manually triggered. Verna told Brent to initiate the privacy override function. That feature's not even public. She had it installed under the trail renovation grant." "Did you log that?" He nodded. I stepped closer. "Then give me the record." His hand flexed. Then he nodded again, once. "But if I hand it over now, it looks like sabotage. She checks access logs. You'll lose the element of surprise." "Then when?" Silas looked out the window toward the HOA office across the greenway. "There's a board budget session in 4 days," he said. "She won't be monitoring file access that morning. Everyone will be inside. What do you want in return?" He blinked like I'd insulted him. "I don't want anything," he said. "I just want to sleep without checking my email at 2 a.m. to see if another parent got flagged because their kid cried too loud on a lawn." I believed him. Not fully, but enough. He turned to leave, but paused at the door. "She won't stop. You know that, right? This won't be the end." "No," I said. "It'll be the beginning." Silas left without another word. I locked the door behind him. Outside, the camera blinked once, green, then red, logging the visit. And just like that, I had a crack in the wall. Verna didn't wait long to escalate. 2 days after Silas stepped through my door, a letter arrived via certified courier. Not email, not portal message, but paper, hand-delivered, requiring a signature. The kind of delivery that feels like legal action even when it isn't. The letterhead was Highbar Summit's official logo. Beneath it, in bold, was the phrase, "Notice of pending compliance hearing." The accusation? Ongoing violations of HOA ordinance regarding unauthorized surveillance, use of militarized monitoring equipment, and behavior detrimental to communal psychological safety. That last phrase, communal psychological safety. I read it twice, then a third time, out loud. Lisa was on the floor nearby, grasping a soft ring toy, oblivious to the political nonsense unfolding 6 feet away. Verna wasn't just accusing me of technical violations now. She was branding me unstable, dangerous. The kind of neighbor who needed containment, isolation. It was strategy by accusation, no proof. Just language designed to make me radioactive. The compliance hearing was scheduled for Saturday morning. Location, the HOA multi-purpose room inside the clubhouse, a space normally used for book clubs and bake sales. I already knew what they'd do. Set up a folding table, 3 board members, 1 compliance enforcer, and Verna presiding like a municipal judge. I wasn't scared of a hearing. I was scared of the precedent. Because it wasn't just me on the docket. The envelope included a secondary memo. Agenda Item 2C, consideration of new standards for child-related modifications and equipment. That was the play. They were about to vote in a rule retroactively banning the very type of stroller I'd designed, not for safety, for appearance, for HOA optics. The timing was too precise to be random. I knew Verna was trying to provoke me, push me into panic, into mistakes, into aggression. She didn't understand who I was. I didn't throw punches, I filed timelines, I didn't bark, I recorded. So I packed a bag and drove 2 neighborhoods over to a different type of address, a place I hadn't visited since Olivia left for her last assignment. The house belonged to Lamar Greer, a retired special investigator who once audited federal housing boards for coercive compliance practices. He was a ghost in the official record now, out of the system, off the books. But Olivia had once called him the last clean blade in a drawer full of rust. He opened the door without smiling, just looked at me, then down at the baby seat in my hand. "Didn't think you'd call me." "I didn't," I said. "I came in person." I sat across from him in a dim, book-lined living room, Lisa cradled against my chest. I handed him the HOA letter. He read it in silence, brow furrowing. "You know what this is, right?" he asked. "Pattern escalation." "No," he said. "It's narrative laying. She's constructing a false risk profile. First the stroller, now the surveillance. Next will be noise complaints, then community fear. She's building toward a board motion for temporary removal." "Of me?" I asked. "Of the child," he said. "Temporary protective custody under false CPS pretext. Seen it before. Twice in California. One in Maricopa. The HOA doesn't even have to win. They just have to scare you into settling." I looked down at Lisa. "You want my advice?" he asked. "I want a firewall," I said. "Something that makes her back off before Saturday." Lamar nodded. "Then you need a trigger file." He stood up, opened a desk drawer, and pulled out a flash drive. Inside were blank templates, federal reporting forms, escalation trees, database submission models. I didn't ask why he had them. He had helped Olivia before. That was enough. He handed me a packet. "You submit this to the Office of the Inspector General with even partial sensor data," he said, "and someone will call you back. Maybe not tomorrow, but soon, and it'll scare the hell out of her." "Will it stop the hearing?" "No," Lamar said, "but it'll change who's watching it." When I got home, I began compiling. Sensor logs, metadata, HOA, portal screenshots, Verna's memo. Silas's signed risk evaluations. He had emailed me 2 under the subject line, Neutral Party Archive. I timestamped everything. Then I encrypted the folder and uploaded it to a private drop with a redundant ping to Olivia's agency email. And finally, I submitted the OIG form, anonymous but traceable. I didn't sleep that night, because now the clock was ticking for both of us. The hearing wasn't a hearing, it was a show trial. They held it in the clubhouse multi-purpose room, just like I expected, fluorescent lights buzzing above, plastic folding chairs set in rows, and a long table at the front with nameplates and pitchers of water like some twisted HOA courtroom. Verna sat dead center, wearing a navy blue blazer with the HOA crest embroidered on the lapel. Brent Dorr was on her right, flipping through a manila folder. Natalie Vicks sat to her left, her posture rigid, eyes down. 3 seats in front of them were marked designated witness seating. I wasn't sure if I was the defendant or the audience. Silas wasn't there. I kept scanning the room, hoping he'd walk in with a file folder under his arm, maybe a flash drive in his pocket, some proof I wasn't just screaming into a void. But the seat beside mine stayed empty. Verna gavelled the session open like she was presiding over a court of law. "We'll begin today's special compliance hearing with Agenda Item 2C, she said, her voice calm, calculated. "Review of non-compliant surveillance installations and equipment posing undue community stress." I didn't speak. I wanted to see what they had. Brent pulled a laminated document from the folder. "We received 4 complaints related to Mr. Trenner's installation of perimeter recording equipment, including one citing directional microphones and another referencing passive motion analytics facing public trails." "Do you have proof of that?" I asked. Verna didn't even glance at me. "The proof lies in the pattern, Mr. Trenner." "That's not evidence," I said. "That's language abuse." "Language reflects community concern," she replied. "Your equipment records more than what is necessary for residential safety. You've created an environment of perceived threat." It took everything I had not to laugh. Perceived threat. My daughter had been thrown out of a stroller. I had sensor data. And they were coming after me for perception. Then Natalie Vick spoke up, first time I'd heard her voice in weeks. "We've also flagged a trend of escalation," she said. "Emotionally intense incident reports, confrontational email tone, repeated appeals. Some of the board feels targeted." That was the trap. They were trying to make me look like the threat. I leaned forward. "Would the board like to see the exact G-force data from the stroller incident?" "Mr. Trenner," Brent began. "I've submitted it to the Office of the Inspector General," I continued, "along with a time-stamped, encrypted copy of your camera logs, incident responses, and Verna's override commands. So, if this is your attempt to build a preemptive risk profile before that investigation concludes, you might want to rethink your opening act." For the first time, Verna's smile cracked. She didn't speak. Brent looked toward her like he was waiting for a signal. The room was quiet. I saw movement at the door. A shape. Silas. He stepped inside slowly, holding a tablet in both hands. Verna saw. Him. Her voice snapped sharp. "This is a closed hearing." Silas didn't stop walking. "I'm the designated risk assessor on all insurance-modifying HOA incidents," he said, "and I'm submitting a correction." He laid the tablet on the table, screen facing the board. "It's a forensic mirror of the Watchpoint camera event stream," he said. "Uncut, pulled from Cloud Sync before Brent archived the log with compression." Brent sat up straight. "I've also filed this version with our liability insurer," Silas added, "because omitting a recorded injury impact could result in claim denial and open the board to personal litigation." The room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the ceiling lights again. Verna didn't say a word. She just stared at him like he'd grown a second head. Silas turned toward me. His voice was even. "You asked why I helped her," he said. "I didn't want to. I just didn't want to lose my job." "You still might," I said quietly. He nodded. "Yeah, but at least I'll sleep tonight." And just like that, the file was on the record. Verna was still trying to maintain control. She looked toward the board, lips tight, and said, "We will reconvene after reviewing the new material." She gavelled the hearing closed, but everyone in that room knew it was already over. The silence afterward was worse than the hearing. No press release, no update to the portal, no apology, just stillness, like they were holding their breath, waiting to see if I'd blink. But I didn't. I filed a formal motion demanding that the board retract the citations, remove the incident from the community archive, and suspend Verna pending the outcome of any federal review. They didn't respond. 2 days passed, then 3. Then came the retaliation. It started with the streetlight behind my house, the one facing the trail where Lisa fell. It shut off at 9:07 p.m. on the dot. Normally it stayed on until sunrise, but that night it didn't. The next morning, I checked the HOA maintenance portal. The light had been marked for scheduled dimming as part of the Energy Conservation Initiative. That program didn't exist. Later that afternoon, I received an anonymous warning email through the HOA contact form. "If you make yourself a liability to this neighborhood, don't be surprised when you're treated like one. No sender, no signature." I traced the IP, masked, but I knew who it was. Not Verna, she wasn't subtle. Brent, maybe, or someone else on the board, hiding behind bylaws and automated workflows. So I stopped waiting for them to do the next thing. I decided to. That night, I rolled Lisa's stroller into the living room and dismantled it piece by piece, not out of frustration, out of purpose. I laid every part on the kitchen island: frame, wheels, sensors, support structures, seat rigging. Then I reassembled only what I needed, trimmed it down, made it look like an ordinary stroller. Nothing special, no visible tech. But inside the left axle housing, I embedded a new ping beacon. It wasn't designed to measure trauma this time. It was designed to stream live environmental telemetry to a server tied directly to Olivia's field account. Humidity, acceleration, tampering, motion paths. If someone touched this stroller again, we'd know. In real time. I took it out the next morning, pushed Lisa down the same trail, slow, intentional. I saw the camera's pivot as I passed. I paused at the exact point where Verna had grabbed the frame and placed a small flag in the soil. No message, just a marker. Then I walked away. That afternoon, Brent filed a secondary concern report to the HOA. It accused me of visual provocations designed to incite board members. I printed it out and tacked it to my garage wall. I wasn't provoking, I was documenting, because I already knew what was coming. They'd try to turn the rest of the board, freeze out Silas, stall the investigation, rewrite the minutes of the hearing. So, I prepared. I built a private incident dashboard, live sync, encrypted, cloud mirrored, every HOA communication auto-forwarded into categorized folders, every neighbor interaction tagged with time, place, and camera feed. Then I started canvassing the neighborhood, not knocking on doors, just walking, stroller in hand, eyes open. People noticed. They didn't speak, but they noticed. And after 4 days, someone cracked. Her name was Leah Harrow, mother of 2, used to chair the neighborhood welcoming committee. She stopped me on the corner of Chatham and Kincaid. "Did you really report them to the federal government?" she asked, eyes darting. "Yes." "Good," she said. "They made us take down my daughter's therapy swing, said the noise disturbed the ducks." I didn't speak. She handed me a folded piece of paper. "It's from Natalie. She wanted no part in the hearing. Said she was pushed into it. Said Verna told her if she didn't play along, she'd be labeled an unstable liability." "What is this?" I asked. "Internal message log from the HOA Slack archive. Natalie screen captured everything before the hearing. I opened it that night. The messages were damning. Verna coaching board members on phrasing, Brent suggesting ways to discredit Mr. Trenner without engaging censor science, Natalie warning them it could backfire, and being shut down. It was enough to bury them. But I wasn't going to leak it, not yet. I was going to wait until they thought I was finished. Let them believe they'd stalled me long enough. Because when Olivia came back, she'd do more than file forms. She'd burn their structure to the ground, lawfully, procedurally, and publicly. And now I had the matches. The front door didn't creak. It clicked shut, quiet and precise. I didn't have to turn around to know who it was. Silas stood just inside the threshold, one foot on the welcome mat, the other, still outside like he wasn't sure if he was allowed in. He looked thinner than he had a week ago. Sleep had given up on him. "I had to loop around," he said. "Didn't want the cameras picking up my plate." "You think that'll stop her from knowing?" I asked. "No," he said. "But it's habit now." He held out a small envelope, unmarked, no seal. I took it and motioned for him to follow me into the kitchen. Lisa was asleep in her bassinet, the room dim except for the glow from the baby monitor and the blinking green light from the wall server. Silas watched the patterns like they were counting down to something. "She's pushing harder," he said. "There's a board-wide vote scheduled for next week. She's calling it a stability review, claims that certain members are compromising the HOA's reputation." "She means you," I said. He nodded. "She thinks if she flips one more person, she can strip your voting access and get a no-confidence motion through before any state-level attention lands." "She's right," he whispered. The envelope in my hand felt heavier now. I opened it. Inside were 2 pages. One was a printed screenshot, time-stamped, with a header from the internal admin panel of the HOA portal, Verna's user ID. A server command executed 12 hours before the Watchpoint incident. Cam override, Trailhead West, 7:00 a.m., 12:00 p.m. The other was a memo, drafted, unsigned, titled, Recommended Sanction for Property 1243B Child Welfare Referral Request, dated 1 day before the hearing. "She had that ready before we even spoke," I said. "She always writes them ahead of time," Silas said. "That way it looks like she's just documenting concern, not reacting to evidence." "This was going to Child Services." "Yes." I stared at it. If she'd sent that referral when planned, I would have had a CPS investigator on my porch before the week ended. It wouldn't matter that Olivia was FBI. It wouldn't matter that we had proof. The system doesn't pause to ask who you are. It just shows up. "She's trying to kill my credibility before Olivia returns," I said. "She knows who your wife is?" Silas asked. "She doesn't know the half of it." He was quiet for a beat, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a black plastic fob, something small, with a silver ring and a rubber seal. "This is the external device log for the trail system," he said. "Every time a board member logs in, plugs in, or makes changes to the firmware, it pings this. You can cross-reference timestamps with portal logs." "You're giving me internal system keys?" I asked. "I'm giving you the proof you'll need when this goes federal," he said. "Because it will." "What about your job?" Silas gave a dry laugh. I submitted my resignation this morning. You didn't have to. I did, he said, cutting me off. Because I was becoming one of them by staying. And because I didn't stop her when she hurt your daughter. His voice cracked on the word hurt. She didn't just tip a stroller, he said. She built a system that's been tipping families for 2 years. I nodded. You didn't push her, but you didn't stop her. I know. He turned to leave. At the door, he hesitated. You still have friends here. They're just scared. They don't want to speak until someone else does first. She won't give them that chance, I said. Then make one, he replied. After he left, I sat in the quiet for a long time. The baby monitor pulsed, soft static rising and falling like breath. On the counter sat the referral draft, the future she had planned for my family, and the override log that proved how she started it. The question wasn't if I'd use them. It was how loud I'd make it when I did. The plan had to be silent until it was deafening. I wasn't going to walk into a board meeting and scream. I wasn't going to file a lawsuit before I had weight behind it. Verna had built her fortress on public perception. Slow, quiet pressure until no one could breathe without her approval. So, I was going to give her exactly what she built: silence, pressure, and collapse. I started with the trail log Silas gave me: access records, device overlays, internal command timings. I mapped out every override event across the last 6 months, 17 total, most of them tied to incident windows where families were fined or cited. 3 were within 2 days of forced departures. I built a timeline, exported it into a forensic visualization layout, and cross-referenced it with HOA-issued public safety warnings. Every one of Verna's override commands preceded a community reminder about child safety. She was manufacturing risk, and she'd done it more than once. Next, I linked those logs to insurance data, public filings, premium jumps, and 3 quiet settlements from last fiscal year, all logged under common area safety ambiguities, hidden beneath technical language. But they were payouts for things Verna had created. I layered the data into one clean file, time-stamped, annotated. Then I created an anonymous burner account and uploaded it all to a secure drop hosted on a server Olivia had set up for field ops, usually used for whistleblower dumps in foreign intelligence environments. I didn't tag anyone, not yet, but I watched the pings light up across the access nodes, first 1, then 6, then 12. They were reading it. The second phase was quieter. I reached out to 3 neighbors, people I hadn't spoken to since the incident: the Blaines, who'd lost their canopy, the Gonzalez family, who'd moved out after the toy fines, and Leah Harrow, who had already stepped up with Natalie's message logs. Each had their own record, their own pain. I didn't ask them to testify. I just asked if I could use their stories. Redacted names, redacted details, but authentic language. Every one of them said yes, so I compiled it. One long document, formatted like a deposition. Each entry began the same. Here's what happened under Verna Kell. I included the therapy swing, the noise citations, the public shaming over toys, a 6-year-old's drawings thrown away because they'd been taped to a window that faced the street. Verna hadn't just abused power, she'd attacked childhood. I combined it all: data, stories, logs, images, and packaged it in a way that couldn't be ignored. Then I gave it a name: the Kell pattern. A term she couldn't wiggle out of, a phrase that sounded like something clinical, institutional, dangerous. I didn't release it, not yet, but I sent it to 2 people, Silas and Natalie Vicks. The subject line was simple: you know what this is. Natalie replied 3 hours later with a single line: tell me what you want me to do. That's when I knew it was time to move. I drafted a community petition, not the kind that lives on a clipboard and dies in someone's garage. This was digital, embedded, tied to verified lot IDs, coded with red receipts, and built into the same portal they used for their HOA ballots. Silas had quietly restored my admin-level credentials for 24 hours. That's all I needed. I titled it, Motion to Suspend Verna Kell from All Board Duties Pending Oversight Review. No rage, no accusations, just facts. Underneath, I included the link to the Kell pattern. For the first 3 hours, no one clicked it. Then someone did. Then 20. By sunset, there were 86 views, 42 signatures, and a long string of quiet endorsements in the private comment feed. I've seen it. This explains so much. We let her go too far. But the most important message came from Natalie. It wasn't long. The insurance provider just pulled our coverage. They read it too. I leaned back in my chair, hands on the edge of the table, and exhaled for the first time in days. Verna hadn't just lost control. She'd lost the thing she valued most. Her authority was no longer a rulebook. It was a liability. The board met in secret the next morning. No agenda was posted, no live stream, no public invite. But I knew they were there. I saw Brent's car parked at the clubhouse before sunrise. Natalie arrived 10 minutes later, walking fast and looking over her shoulder like she was being followed. Silas stood outside for a while before they let him in. He didn't look back at the camera. He didn't have to. I'd already scheduled the next move. While they scrambled behind closed doors, the portal lit up. Residents were now forwarding the petition link to each other with silent urgency. I watched the IP logs roll in from addresses I hadn't seen before. New homeowners, retired couples, families that had stayed quiet through all of it. 176 views, 79 signatures. Then 84, then 92. The comments told me everything I needed to know. We thought it was just us. She threatened to report my daughter for excessive crying. She said my autistic son's climbing wall was a safety risk. Every single entry was its own weight. By noon, the Kell pattern had become a whisper on every street in High Bar Summit. But I wasn't finished. The final step was preparation. Olivia's flight was already scheduled. She was flying in under agency clearance with documentation prepared by her office's legal division. Not because she was coming to arrest anyone, but because she was coming as a federally credentialed witness with authority to file live status reports on local overreach tied to child welfare systems. And we were going to make that report public. I didn't plan a confrontation. I built a frame, a canvas big enough for Verna to hang herself. The HOA's spring newsletter was due that week. Natalie still had publishing access. Verna hadn't revoked it yet. So I drafted a message for Natalie to include as an editor's note. It was only 2 lines long. The board invites all residents to next week's special session, where community safety protocols and leadership conduct will be discussed transparently. No names, no charges, just oxygen. Natalie posted it. Verna tried to delete it the same day. But the cached version was already archived. Residents had screenshotted it. The newsletter had been emailed automatically to 243 homes. It was out. That's when the retaliation changed form. Not loud, not direct. This time, it came quietly. Around 8:00 p.m., I noticed my access to the HOA portal had been restricted. No alert, just an unauthorized credentials message when I tried to view the petition dashboard. The signatures were still there. I'd backed them up, but my admin keys were gone. Then came the knock. Not on the front door, on the back gate. I stepped into the yard and found Brent standing there, sleeves rolled up, trying to look casual. "You can't just post things like that," he said without preamble. "I didn't post anything," I said. "I submitted a motion. You remember those, from the bylaws." His jaw clenched. "You're destabilizing the neighborhood. I'm restoring it." "Verna's worked for herself," I cut in. He didn't argue. He looked tired, smaller. "What do you want, Malrique?" That was the first time he'd used my name. "I want you to vote," I said. "For once, not with fear, not for your seat. Vote for your kid, for your wife, for your neighbors who moved out in silence because they thought no one would believe them." "I can't fix this," he whispered. "No," I said. "But you can stop making it worse." He stood there for a long second, then turned and left the way he came. I didn't watch him go. Instead, I sat down at the kitchen table, opened the dashboard on my backup server, and reviewed every timestamp, every log, every file. Tomorrow would be the public reckoning. Every piece was in place, and Verna had no idea how loud it was about to get. They tried to move the meeting. An email went out at 6:42 a.m. from the HOA communications account, marked urgent notice. It said the session would be rescheduled to a private board quorum due to procedural concerns and documentation backlog. No new date, no public access. I read it twice, then forwarded it directly to Olivia. She was already in the air. That email was the last defensive wall they had, and it was cracked. By 9 a.m., I was standing outside the clubhouse. I didn't bring anything except a flash drive, the baby monitor clipped to my belt, and a thin folder marked Resident Submission, Motion 2B. Nothing theatrical, just enough to make them squirm. Residents began showing up within the hour. They came in pairs, slowly, carefully, like people coming to watch a car fire without admitting they wanted to see it burn. Someone had printed out the petition. Another brought her HOA violations folder. 12 citations in 2 years, half of them for visual discordance, because of the toys on her porch. One man wore a shirt that read, "I live here too." No one said a word. The doors were locked. So I waited. And at 10:17 a.m., Olivia stepped out of a black SUV at the end of the cul-de-sac. She wasn't wearing her badge. She wasn't in a suit. She looked like any other mother walking into a neighborhood building, with a portfolio tucked under one arm and her hair still windblown from the ride. But her presence carried weight. Verna opened the doors herself. Her face was frozen into that strained smile she always used for HOA photos, the one where her lips tightened like they were holding in a threat. "I wasn't notified of a federal observer," she said, voice like glass. "I'm not here as an observer," Olivia replied. "I'm here to submit an incident report." Verna's smile cracked. Inside, the room looked nothing like a community session. The tables were arranged in a tight horseshoe, the chairs for residents shoved to the far walls. Brent was already seated, looking pale. Natalie was clutching a stack of papers, eyes darting. Silas stood behind her. Olivia walked to the front of the room and placed her folder on the table. "I'm submitting an emergency summary of coordinated safety violations by the HOA leadership of High Bar Summit," she said. "It includes falsified citations, evidence suppression, and pattern-targeted harassment of families with medical or developmental needs." Verna started to speak. Olivia raised a hand. "I'm not here to argue," she said. "I'm here to trigger external oversight under U.S. Code Title 42, Section 1983. The room went silent. Title 42. Civil action for deprivation of rights. Brent blinked like he'd swallowed something wrong. Silas cleared his throat and stepped forward. "I've cross-confirmed the timeline," he said quietly. "The override logs, the incident files, the petition counts, it's all valid." Verna turned on him, voice sharp. "You're not authorized to speak as risk officer anymore." "Then I'll speak as a resident," he replied. He stepped aside, and that's when I moved. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't grandstand. I walked to the center of the room, held up the flash drive, and set it on the table. "This contains the forensic sync logs from my daughter's stroller," I said. "It recorded the impact event Verna caused, the override timestamps you tried to hide, and the insurance-linked settlements that followed similar incidents." Verna's jaw tightened. "You have one option now," I continued. "You can let the board vote, publicly, with every resident here." Natalie stood. "I second that motion," she said. Brent didn't look up. "I abstain." Silas stepped forward. Motion carried. Verna remained seated, but her power didn't. Because one by one, residents moved from the walls to the center. They stood behind chairs. They held folders. Some held photos. Others just stood with nothing but years of silence in their hands. And finally Verna rose, slow, stiff, trembling. "Then let the record show," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "I resign." There was no cheer, no applause, just breathe. And for the first time in months, it was easy to take in. Verna didn't return home after the resignation. Her house sat dark that night, porch light off, curtains drawn. The neighborhood that once bent around her in fear now passed it like an old tree that had finally been cut down. No one knocked, no one asked where she'd gone. She left in silence. The same way she ruled, but her systems didn't vanish. 2 days after the vote, I received a letter from the HOA legal liaison, polite, neutral. It acknowledged the board's internal decision and confirmed her removal from all leadership roles, pending formal review of conduct. It didn't mention Olivia, or the stroller, or the override logs. They still wanted to bury it quietly, but it was too late for that. Olivia filed her report the same afternoon. The official summary was 15 pages, dense and clinical, loaded with code references, impact patterns, procedural failures. But the final paragraph was different. It read, "The events at High Bar Summit are not isolated. They reflect a broader trend of unregulated power concentrated within private neighborhood boards, often without oversight. In this case, a child was harmed and a pattern of targeted enforcement was uncovered, but it should not require federal involvement to protect a 6-month-old from abuse disguised as policy. That paragraph made it to the inboxes of 3 agencies, then to a state representative, and finally to a journalist. I didn't give any quotes, neither did Olivia, but the article still found its way online within the week. The stroller case, when HOAs go too far. They used a photo of the trail behind our house, the flag I'd placed still visible in the dirt. They blurred Lisa's face, but the implication was clear. A system had tried to punish a parent for protecting their child, and the system lost. After that, the letters started, handwritten notes, folded and slipped into our mailbox, left under the doormat. Quiet thank yous from neighbors who'd stayed silent for too long. Some offered apologies, others offered help. A few just said they wished they'd spoken up sooner. One envelope didn't have a name, just a quote on the back. Silence is compliance, and we were too compliant. The HOA didn't collapse, not entirely, but the board changed. Natalie stayed on, Silas too. 3 new members were voted in, parents mostly. People who'd been fined for absurd things now stepping into the light. They called a town hall 3 weeks after the vote. It was the first time anyone could remember a full room at a community meeting. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The others did. Leah Harrow stood up and read the violations Verna had issued for her daughter's swing. A father from Kincaid Lane read an excerpt from the referral Verna had drafted for his autistic son's weighted vest. Even Brent came. He didn't defend himself. He just listened, then stood and said, "I was wrong to protect the structure. It wasn't protecting us." That mattered, more than I expected. I rebuilt the stroller eventually, not for function, but for closure. I replaced the damaged components, polished the frame, and sealed the sensors. Then I took it to the trail. Same place, same time of day. This time, Lisa wasn't in it. She walked beside me, fingers curled around 2 of mine, still wobbly, still wide-eyed, but strong, steady. We passed the watch point. I paused and looked up at the camera. It blinked green, not red. I'd replaced the firmware, set it to upload to a shared drive maintained by a rotating resident committee. Open source, transparent. We stood there a minute longer. Then Lisa tugged my hand. "Home," she said. Just that. And we walked back, one small footstep at a time. No threats, no warnings, no shadows. Just a trail. And a flag still planted in the dirt, marking the place where everything changed. The bench sits just past the watch point now. Not a regulation bench, not one ordered by the HOA. It's hand-built, low, sturdy, carved from cedar. No plaque. Just a faint imprint burned into the backrest that reads, "She stood. So we stood." Natalie's idea. She coordinated the materials, the labor, the quiet votes to approve it. Silas helped sand it down. Leah painted the lettering with a brush so thin she had to switch hands halfway through. No board member objected. No one even brought it up. It just appeared one morning after the vote, positioned perfectly beneath the old live oak near the spot. Where Verna had grabbed the stroller, where Lisa had fallen, where a system once thought silence meant power. I didn't cry the first time I saw it, but I sat, and that felt like enough. Lisa toddled toward the edge of the path while I watched. She stopped at the base of the tree and looked up like she was trying to measure its height with her eyes. She didn't remember what happened here. She never would, and that was the entire point. We never told her everything. But someday, when she's old enough to ask why there are holes in the ground where flowers should be, or why the grown-ups whisper when the trail comes up in conversation, I'll tell her the truth. That it started with her. And it ended because people like Olivia, people like Natalie and Silas and every quiet neighbor who stood up, decided fear wasn't going to make the rules anymore. The HOA's rules were rewritten that summer, not just edited, torn down and rebuilt. Every citation issued during Verna's term was reviewed. Half were rescinded. Several families received formal apologies. One got a check. Not enough to fix the years they'd lost, but enough to say we saw what happened. Brent resigned quietly. He left a single email behind addressed to the neighborhood. We forgot what community meant. That's on me. I hope the next board does better. They did. High Bar Summit didn't become perfect overnight, but the surveillance logs were no longer private. Portal edits required resident verification. The phrase psychological safety was removed from every policy document it had infected. The Kell pattern became a national talking point. A city council in Oregon cited it during a vote to dissolve their HOA's fining authority. A local journalist wrote a follow-up piece titled, "When Neighborhoods Forget Their Neighbors." Olivia was invited to speak at a housing oversight panel in D.C. She declined. "I didn't do this for headlines," she said. "I did this because I have a daughter, and I want her to live where dignity isn't conditional." That was enough. Lisa climbed onto the bench beside me and looked out toward the trail, eyes tracing the same line I'd followed the day everything changed. Then she looked up. "Is it over now?" she asked. I didn't answer right away, because part of me knew it wouldn't ever really be over. Not everywhere, not for every family. There would always be another Verna in another neighborhood, ready to weaponize the rules against the ones who didn't fit her frame. But here, on this trail, in this pocket of reclaimed dignity, it was over. "For us," I said. "Yeah, it's over." And for the first time in months, I believed it. So, if you've ever had to fight your HOA to keep your child safe, or your parents, or your pets, or your peace of mind, if you've ever been told you don't belong in the neighborhood you live in, know this: you are not alone, and silence is not your only option. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from, especially if you've been through something like this. Subscribe so we can keep telling stories like these, loudly, publicly, and without permission. Because we don't build communities through power, we build them through people.